Guys, how's everyone doing today? You guys hear me? Yes, no. I'm gonna take it as a yes that you guys can hear me. I'm just letting you guys know that I'm still waiting for Ila. I think she's running a couple minutes late, but she will be leading today's class. But yes, so if you just want to stand by, she should be here soon.
Oh, good. All right.
Hi there. I'm not sure who from the KW Larchmont team is on board, but I apologize for hopping on a few minutes late. I'm not sure if we should give folks some additional time to join in, as I see people are still joining, but happy to get started whenever you think I should, or if I should give some time.
Ila, let's wait maybe till, let's say 11:10, and then we could go ahead and get started, okay?
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'll have my video on. I'll just wait till it's go time and then I'll pop up.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, so we're about 10 minutes past, and I think it's probably a good time to get started. Thanks for those of you who have hopped on today and don't want to waste your time. So of course, happy to get started and get this thing rolling. Unless you have anything to add from the KW team, I'll take it away if not, but in any case, I'll give you a chance if you'd like to make any comments before we get started. Otherwise, I'll be going through a quick presentation concierge program, and a lot of it will be question and answer. I'll try to make it as conversational as possible rather than me just going through a deck for you all. So I'll go through a short deck and then again go through questions and answers and maybe an example of how the service works, and otherwise really hope to make this a presentation to help you understand the service that we offer and hopefully so that you can leverage it in the future. So with that being said, my name is Ila Corcoran. I work for a company called Zoom Casa, and we are the operational partner to power the KW Concierge Program offered via your brokerage. The service in its genesis was really positioned as a seller-facing tool. So it was designed to help you all compete with other concierge programs in the market and to enable your clients to pay for the cost of pre-sale home prep like staging, painting, etc., at close, so that they didn't have to pay for it up front. They didn't have to pay for the services prior to the sale of their home. They could instead pay for it out of their equity. But as the market has evolved and adapted, and over the course of the past year really gotten progressively hotter and faster, our service has adapted as well accordingly. So the service now includes a number of different options for folks throughout the entire homeownership life cycle. And speaking about the life cycle, we can talk about sellers in that we offer our pre-sale listing prep concierge still, as we originally did, but we also offer a buy before you sell service, as well as senior services really designed to help your senior folks and clients maximize this tool to help them simplify their moving process into assisted living or another home otherwise. We also offer services for buyers to include home customization, repairs and maintenance for their home to help them navigate everything that comes with homeownership. Not listed here, we also offer a cash offer program, really designed to help your buyers become cash buyers in today's market, where writing financed offers can be difficult. So we offer a service where a client can leverage our proof of funds to write a cash offer that's more acceptable. And when it's accepted, they can assume the offer and essentially take over with financing to close. And I'll get into more details as we progress through the presentation. And then finally, talking about a move-in concierge, we offer moving, packing, storage, utilities, helping to get all that connected to really simplify the moving process for a client and make this a tool that they can leverage while they move so that they don't have to worry about the stress as much of moving. But what I'll talk about first and give kind of a high level overview is our buy before you sell service. And again, what I'm going to do is go through this deck and this quick presentation, and then we can go through an example of this in practice and talk a little bit further about anything that really piques your interest. So talking about buy before you sell, this is a tool for your sellers who are also buyers. So it allows them to leverage their asset to become liquid enough to go write an offer, qualify for conventional financing, and otherwise secure a purchase on a new home to move into prior to the sale of their prior home. And the way that it works is actually logistically structured as two transactions. So in the first transaction, we actually purchase the client's home at up to 75% of its current value. So $1 million home, we'll purchase it for $750,000. And any existing debts they have or mortgage balances paid off at that point, and they can use the remaining cash to go qualify for financing, or in some cases, if they're downsizing, they can write a cash offer on a new property. This really enables them to avoid writing contingent offers and avoid living through renovations and showings on their prior home, because upon their purchase of a new home, we turn around and list their old home with you, the agent who initiated the service. And upon its sale, the client receives an additional check for the remainder of their proceeds due to that. So in other words, they're not sacrificing their equity. They're not sacrificing the upside that they may have access to by going through this program as they would with like an iBuyer or another service. Rather, they're getting some of their proceeds in advance of the sale and then the rest later, right? So the net cost typically works out to be 1 to 2% of the value of the home versus a traditional sale. In some cases, they come out ahead, meaning in some cases their net is actually higher when they go through this process because we can help them to prepare their home for sale and maximize their proceeds, as well as avoid some of the costs associated with being a contingent buyer in today's market. And again, I'll go through an example to really help conceptualize exactly how this works as we go through our presentation today. So I'll talk a little bit about the fine print. Agents, you all can schedule a one-on-one meeting with one of our reps to discuss specifically how this service works at any time. So a huge component of the concierge program, especially as it's been relaunched, is making resources accessible to you all so that when you have a need for the service, you know where to go and you have someone to call and a resource to call on so that you have someone to introduce the service, to explain it to a client, to go through the details, etc. We'll also have a real-time calculator that you can use and create examples of exactly how it would work and submit inquiries to our system and go through, again, the example with your client so that you can have an educated conversation with them about how this process works. But buy before you sell is really just one component of the services that we offer. Again, looking at this full life cycle, we offer a ton of different things. So with that in mind, our service is structured with a subscription because some of you may want to use us for different things. For example, if you're only interested in pre-sale home prep, you can enroll in our service at the concierge level and get access to an online dashboard where you can submit listings and otherwise get in touch with our team and manage projects, etc. But for those of you that are interested in some of the additional services that we offer, because there's so much variance and so many different options, we provide one-on-one training and support so that you can talk to someone virtually and say, you know, hey, I really want to learn about buy before you sell. I think I have a client, or, you know, I work with a lot of seniors. How do your senior services work, etc. So to maximize this service and help you leverage it to its fullest extent, we need to understand your business a little bit and make sure that we're giving you the tools and resources that are most applicable to your clients. Thus, we provide a one-on-one rep for you when you enroll at the plus level and additional support that you wouldn't receive at the concierge level, being that you would only offer pre-sale home prep. So because we offer that one-on-one support, the subscription typically costs $249 a year. This cost really covers our investment into having a rep assigned to you and support you, but that cost has been comped via the partnership we've established with your brokerage. So you don't have to worry about paying that at all for 1 year. And if you do decide to proceed with the subscription thereafter, then that's ultimately up to you, but there's no cost to enroll, no cost to get a dedicated rep assigned to you, and no cost to use the service because of, again, the promotional partnership we've made with your brokerage to offer it for free. And so, you know, just to clarify, really compared to other concierge programs, this is the only service in the market where you'll be assigned to a one-on-one support rep that's gonna, you know, be there for you at any time to discuss the services and otherwise be a point of contact that you can rely on. So it really exceeds other services in that it's a high-touch program designed to provide that additional support. So it's up to you to choose how you'd like to enroll, but again, they're both offered complimentary at this time. So it's likely in your best interest to enroll for Concierge Plus and choose how to proceed from there once you've had a meeting with a member of our team and kind of discussed all the options that are most applicable to you and your business. And these are the enrollment instructions. Maybe I'll just leave these in the chat to include the sign up page and the coupon code. I know it was circulated to you all via an email. I believe I saw an email campaign that went out. And for now, we're extending the enrollment period. It was valid until the 16th, which was 2 days ago, but we'll be extending that through the end of the month, so through March 30th. So you'll be able to enroll at no cost throughout the entire course of the month. And final kind of housekeeping item is just to give you a peek into the dashboard. Again, no matter what level you enroll in, you'll have access to a dashboard with marketing, with training, with a project submission button, and with a buy before you sell tab. So you can select this button and a calendar will pop up, and that will enable you to book a meeting with a member of our team to discuss the buy before you sell service at any time. So if you have a client that's interested in leveraging that tool and you want to talk specifically about how it would work for them, you can hop on a call with someone and go through those details as immediately as you'd like to, and loop in your client as well to discuss the service and pitch it to them as a tool that they may benefit from. So all the resources live in this dashboard. That way, really at a click of a button, you can get whatever you need, whether it's marketing, whether it's training, whether it's, you know, a meeting with us or submitting a project, etc. It all lives within here. So with that in mind and with that kind of out of the way, what I'd like to do is go through an example of our buy before you sell service, maybe with some help from you all to talk a little bit about how that would work and an example in practice of what that would look like. So to do so, I'm going to share a different screen here and we'll go through those numbers. And I might need some involvement from you all to help me arrive to some figures that we can work with. So don't be alarmed by the spreadsheet on a Friday morning, but I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. In any case, to start us off, if someone could throw out a potential list price, maybe median list price that you deal with in your business, we can start there. Any takers want to throw out a number?
I think that's 1.5 is good.
1.5, okay, let's stick with that. Thank you. And then how about mortgage balance? I know there's not really like a general, you know, consensus or average necessarily, but would anyone like to volunteer a potential mortgage balance for us to consider for the purposes of the example? Why don't I throw out, we can do $300,000. So just to help give some idea of how it would work. So in this example, we're talking about a client who owns a home valued at just under $1.5 million, and they have an existing mortgage balance of $300,000, meaning they have 80% equity in their home. Now, what we do is we essentially go through this example with a client, and in practice and actually using the service, we would then order an appraisal to arrive to a number as far as home value. So 1.5 would be the appraised value in order for this to actually work the way it will in this example, meaning we use the appraisal to determine what the home value is. So with that in mind, let's say we get an appraisal and it says the home's valued at just under 1.5. Thus, we will write an offer on the client's home at 75% of that appraised value. So if it's 1.499, then we'll write an offer at just over $1,124,000. So we write an offer at 75% of the appraised value. And because we're actually purchasing the home, the existing mortgage will have to be paid off. And we reason 1% to be towards closing costs, making their proceeds out of the first leg of the transaction just over $800,000. Now I'm going to pause here and go back up to looking at the price of 75%. So basically what I'm saying is we write an offer at 75% of their client's present value, and then we stay under contract while they begin shopping for a home. So let's say they're looking to upgrade and move to a home valued at $1.6 million, in which case the lender can pre-approve them on the basis that they'll have just over $800,000 in their pocket upon our purchase of their home. And following the expiration of the contingency period, meaning after contingencies are lifted, we're now a non-contingent buyer of their home. We're under contract to purchase their home, thus making them able to be a non-contingent buyer of a future home. So again, we stay under contract with them at just over 1.1 million. They begin writing offers, and let's say they get an offer accepted on a $1.6 million home and they're closing in a month. What we'll do is then close in 3 weeks, and at week 3, we close, they get their $800,000 cash to then be able to put down money on their purchase and close on their purchase as well. meaning we close concurrently so that they avoid a lease back period and can stay in their home for the duration of the time that we're under contract to purchase their home. So again, they get $800,000, they move on, they take that cash, they finish closing on their purchase, they move into a new home, and now they're out of their home and we're technically the owners. So we now own the home and we turn around and list it with you, the agent who initiated the service. And we reason that perhaps in this market, we can list it above ask or above appraised value, I should say, at $6 million. And let's say the home needs a little bit of work. Maybe it needs to be staged and painted, which would total maybe close to $20,000. Again, these are all numbers that we use as an example. In which case, if the home sells at just under 1.6 million, following $22,000 worth of pre-sale home prep, commission and closing costs will be paid out off the top. Our fee of 3% is as well paid out at just over $47,000. And we're reimbursed for the initial $1.1 million that we paid when we purchased the client's home. In this example, I said the home needed to be staged and prepped. So we're reimbursed for the $22,000 in change that we spent on that reimbursement as agreed upon ahead of time by the prior owner. And the remainder net is then paid to the seller. So the seller gets the rest of their money when the home is sold to the end user, the new buyer who's going to come in and purchase the home from us, meaning they're made whole. The prior seller is made whole at the end of the transaction. And their total proceeds in this example are equal to just over $1.1 million in total. Now, the really critical part about this example is comparing this to a traditional sale, because we reason that if they went through a traditional sale, although they would avoid our 3% fee, perhaps in writing offers, they have to come in above ask. Right? If you're writing a contingent offer, you're probably coming in substantially above ask if you want to write an acceptable offer. And even so, the odds of it being accepted are fairly slim in this market. Perhaps you'll have to move twice if you want to avoid being a contingent buyer. You have to move once when you sell and then once when you buy so that you can kind of maintain both being a buyer and a seller in today's market. Or if you have to have a double mortgage, there's an expense associated with that as well. So we make these adjustments to consider really what their cost would be to go through a traditional sale, absent our involvement, and what their total net would look like. And we arrived to just over $1 million in comparison to 1.1 on the left-hand side when they go through a traditional sale versus when they go through the buy before you sell service, being that they're leveraging our cash to be able to purchase a home. So again, putting it all in perspective typically helps get a big picture idea of exactly how it works. But I think what would be helpful is if I open it up to questions and see what you all think or any questions you might have about logistically how this works, so we can talk about it a little bit more.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the example of going through the concierge, you're selling the house at the end, you're selling it for more than you're selling in the traditional sale. Why is that?
That's because we said that we did pre-sale home prep. So, and based on the really data points from NAR, National Association of Realtors, they say, and I'm sure you all will agree, that a home that's vacant and a home that's staged or painted is going to sell more than a home that's not, regardless of how hot the market is. That's just kind of the way it goes. So we think, and reasonably based on our past performance, that if the client has moved out of the home and we have a chance to get in and do maybe painting and staging, it's probably going to sell above as is value, versus if they're living in the home, all their stuff is in there, a buyer comes in and is like, well, yeah, I'll buy it for 1.5, versus a staged beautiful home that, you know, now looks like it's worth 1.6. So again, this is all an example, but we arrived at these numbers based on prior performance. And in 2020, our numbers were that if a client spends 1.5% of their property's value in pre-sale home prep, which in this example would be $22,485, then their home will sell for 6.4% above as is value. So that's how we arrive specifically at the numbers that are reflected here. Again, it's an example, but ultimately that's why you're seeing that the way it is.
Okay, so I have two other questions.
Yeah.
During when you initially buy the house for 75% of the value, is that do you have the normal uh, inspection contingencies and all of that stuff or not?
We do have an inspection contingency. We don't have like a loan contingency. We're a cash buyer. So we'll purchase the home cash, but we will do an inspection just to ensure, that any deferred maintenance is addressed and we're all in agreement as to what improvements will be necessary for the home to make it saleable. But otherwise, there won't be any additional contingencies.
But there would be the normal, would there be the normal title and escrow fees and all of that?
Yes.
Okay. And then my next question is, if you have a client, say you have a client who is a designer,
Mhm.
and you've worked with them before and their house is beautifully staged and done and all that, can they still use this model if you're not doing the pre-sale home prep?
Yeah, totally. So when we actually sit down with a client and with you, we'll say, what's the home valued at as is? And what do you think you'll sell it for? And maybe those numbers will be the same because their home just looks that great, in which case we'll go through those numbers accordingly. So you don't need to use these assumptions that we've made and the stats we've plugged in. It's really just for the purposes of an example. When we're actually talking to a client, some clients will need $80,000 worth of work, right? And some will need $2,000 worth of work. So it's really catered to that person that we're speaking to. And they don't have to do any pre-sale home prep. It's by no means a condition of the service. We do reason that staging will be necessary because presumably they've moved out, which is why they're using this service so they can move out before they sell. In which case, if their home's vacant, we might recommend staging it. It's at the expense of the seller though, because it's taken out of their proceeds. So ultimately it's up to them and they can say no.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great questions.
Ila, in the chat, somebody was asking if if they're able to use the spreadsheet for their next client.
Yeah, so when you sign up for the service and you go to that buy before you sell button that I showed just previously, it'll pop up the calendar. You can book a meeting, and when you speak with the rep, we'll go through an example with you and we'll use the spreadsheet. So let's say your client's on the call, you're on the call. You'll run the call basically, but we'll go through the numbers as you tell us to, and we'll explain to the client exactly how it works. So to answer your question, yes, it will be available with the assistance of a rep. And how is cost determined? That's another question that I see, which is a great question. So in this example, our cost is 3%. And something really critical that I pointed out and that we point out when we talk to the client is that despite our 3% fee, if you're realizing cost savings on the purchase, you're avoiding a mortgage expense, you're avoiding a contingent offer expense, and that offsets our cost, then perhaps it reasons why using the service is beneficial to you and your bottom line. So we go through that with them and explain costs to them. But as far as how it's determined, it's really based on our assessment of risk. So it'll be within 3 to 5%, really based on our assessment of the property's location, how liquid the market is. In this market, most of the homes are selling quickly, so we're able to keep our costs closer to 3%. And then as well, how long we think the home will sell, et cetera. So for that reason, costs are quoted on kind of a case by case basis, hovering between 3 and 5%. I'm trying to sign up. Oh, go ahead.
Question. This is Will. So was there a commission on the first leg? So we don't get commission until the house resells?
Exactly. So you get commission on the resale transaction. If you negotiate with your client for them to pay you commission twice, then that's between you and your client. Kudos to you if you do. But ultimately, it makes the most sense to pay the commission on the resale so that they're not paying it twice, and you're getting commission on the higher price.
And what's the percentage?
Whatever you agree upon with your client. In this example, we used, I think, 6%, but ultimately it's whatever, and that's for both sides. But when you take the listing and you arrive at a commission rate, that's what we set this as. It's ultimately determined by the seller and you.
Okay, and can you break down the mortgage expense?
Sure.
Under your adjustments for the future home?
Yeah, so what we assumed is that their current mortgage that they have, and then in this example, their balance is $300,000. We assume that they got that mortgage, some time ago, and the mortgage rate is 4%, and they'd have to pay it for 3 months. So if it's a mortgage rate that they have to pay, if it's a mortgage that they're paying for 3 months at 4% plus a mortgage on a purchase, which on this example, they're going to have just under $1.3 million mortgage at 3.5% based on today's rates for 3 months, added together will total close to $22,000. Again, these numbers are fluid and flexible based on the current situation that a client's in. Maybe they only have to pay the mortgage on their purchase for 1 month and the mortgage on their prior home for 1 month as well, which would then mean this number is adjusted, but we arrive at that number based on the explanation I just gave you, 3 months of paying 2 mortgages.
Okay, now in this market, homes are basically flying off the shelf. So how do you sell that to a client?
So we sell that to a client by basically saying to them, ultimately your home might sell quicker, thus you won't have to pay your this can be changed. So it really depends on the situation. They may not have to pay a mortgage for 3 months, but even so, their net proceeds at $1,064,000 without including these adjustments is still below the 1.1 we forecast them to receive by going through this process. Because if they sell their home at 1.5, let's say in this market, you don't have to make any repairs and concessions, but you do have to pay off your existing mortgage and perhaps your home's not vacant. So it sells at ask or at maybe just above it to arrive at 1.5. You do have to pay out commissions and closing costs, and your total net proceeds will be just under 1.1. But even if you don't pay for a double mortgage because you're able to leverage, or it's below that a number I had here, so we just won't include it for the purposes of simplicity, and you don't have to move twice, but you do have to write a contingent offer. So if you want to make an acceptable contingent offer and you're coming 30 grand above ask, then we have to adjust for that additional cost that you're paying by not going through our process, meaning we reduce your total proceeds by $32,000 because that's an additional cost you would incur, making your total net, $1,062,000 versus 1.1. So again, it's all kind of flexible. It's hard to say exactly how you'll sell it to a client based on the client situation. Some clients don't have a mortgage, so that's not even considered. They don't have any mortgage that they're paying on their existing home. But again, having to come in above ask on a contingent offer is a cost that maybe they'd consider, or maybe the fact that their current home needs work and they don't want to have to live through it. So maybe that's what we focus on if we're talking to a client that has significant deferred maintenance. So it's going to depend on the client and what their needs are, and those adjustments will fluctuate accordingly.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ila, what was the promo code, the actual code for the promotion that you guys are offering?
Oh, sure. It's the word relaunch in all lowercase.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Ila, are there any repairs that you won't do when we're talking about deferred maintenance?
No, as long as there's equity in the home to complete them. So for example, if the repairs are going to be in excess of the 25% equity that, would be payable upon close, then that's a conversation we'll have. Or if the repairs, if it makes more sense to do less repairs and sell it than to do all of them and take 3 months worth of time to do so, then that's a conversation we have. But we don't have like a project or a scope item that's like, we absolutely won't do this. We've probably done everything under the sun at this point. It's just a matter of kind of context, making it make sense for the client.
Ila, I just had a question in regards to the first part of the transaction after you guys purchase it, and that question about the inspection contingency. I'm curious, how can that affect that closing? Like, is it like whether you buy it or not, or like whether you reduce the price? Like what's the outcome of the inspections, and like can you run some examples by us, like of what?
Yeah, so we will get an appraisal and an inspection. So the appraisal is coming at and looking at the as is value and is saying it's worth 1.5. And the inspection is going to come in and say, what work is necessary for the home to be sold. So we'll look at that work and have a conversation with the seller as to what the best way to proceed is. For example, let's say the inspection comes in pretty good and there's, maybe some plumbing work that needs to be done that will total close to $10,000. We'll be in agreement with the seller that we're going to handle that when they leave the property, close escrow on the resale, but it doesn't affect our ability to purchase the home. It just affects basically kind of how the process will work based on what work is needed. Does that make sense? So we're buying it based on the appraised value, not based on the inspection, because we're not buying it to occupy, we're buying it to unlock their equity so that they can go make a purchase.
Question.
Sure.
I came in at the middle. I heard there was a promo code. So does that mean there's an upfront fee for something?
Yeah, so the service that we offer, and I'll go back quickly to the deck that I showed. The service that we offer is offered on a subscription basis, meaning you enroll in our platform and get access to our dashboard, and you could subscribe to the service based on whatever you're interested in. To offer our buy before you sell service, you would need to subscribe at the Concierge Plus level, because we assign a dedicated rep who goes through these details with you and offers some of our other services to you, as well as is kind of someone you can call at any time when you have a need for the service. So for that reason, it's typically $249 a year to enroll with that dedicated support, but we've waived that cost for the first year. As long as you use the code relaunch at enrollment and sign up with the code, you can create an account and basically get free access to a rep for a year. And then from there, decide if you'd like to continue the service, if you think it's impactful for your business.
This is per agent unlimited properties.
Correct.
Okay. What's the price with the promo code?
$0. It's free with the promo code.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you can enroll for free, and in 365 days, you can decide if you want to continue. You will get notified prior to renewal, so you won't be auto charged without knowledge. You'll know ahead of time, oh, maybe I should cancel it, or great, I'm going to continue based on what you want to do. But you can enroll for free, get a dedicated rep, and have that one-on-one support to kind of go through all of these options. I also mentioned a cash offer program that's very attractive in today's market, where we'll actually write a cash offer on behalf of a buyer, and upon its acceptance, we'll assign that offer to your client, who will assume the contract and basically close with financing despite our offer's acceptance as a cash offer. So that's one option that we'll offer to you all and your clients, and something you can talk about too with the dedicated rep as a service to bring to your buyers that you might be representing. So that said, I know I've gone through a lot of things, but I can imagine there's some more questions. See some questions about where to sign up. So I'm just going to put it in the chat here. Jan has a question. Sure thing, Jan. What's your question?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. My question is, fortunately, I did that before everyone started yelling, unmute, unmute. My question is, with the cash offer, how does that work? Do they, who handles the financing, and do they get approved by you for a loan before you make the cash offer, basically?
Yeah, great question. So prior to us making a cash offer, we'll execute a contract with the client that basically says that they'll pay us the earnest money deposit that would be due upon the offer's acceptance, and they can establish that they've been pre-approved. So we're not a lender, so they can get pre-approved with any lender they'd like. And as long as they can prove that they're pre-approved for the amount they're looking to write an offer at, or otherwise they can, secure funds to cover the difference, or whatever the case may be, they have to be pre-approved as a condition to use the service, and they have to have the cash for the earnest money deposit before we will write the cash offers. And we do have a contract that we sign with them that outlines these expectations.
And then is the offer that they submit just a traditional, car form, and it just says all cash?
Yeah, so it's actually written it's written by you, and you're representing us as Zoom Casa. We write the offer using our cash and our proof of funds. And then upon its acceptance, we will assign the offer to your buyer, who will then assume the contract and take over. But it's a standard offer in that it's the purchase agreement, the standard car purchase agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just for some clarification there. So from the seller's standpoint on the Uplight property, they are seeing Zoom Casa as the buyer.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
So some sellers will say, we will allow, we don't want any assumptions. Have you guys had that happen before? Or they don't want you to assign your rights to someone else?
Yeah, so basically, if they explicitly say that, then, in I guess the law of assignability with contracts is that the contract can be assigned unless there's a provision in the contract that says otherwise. So in the California purchase agreement, there's not, which means we're able to make the assignment. If they explicitly say that they don't want that to be the case, ultimately they decide if they want to accept the offer. So when they accept the offer, they're accepting an offer that can be assigned, thus enabling us to assign it. So in California, we haven't run into that issue. In other states where we do this, like Nevada, the purchase agreement actually explicitly says that it's not assignable. So we add in a provision, thus making it assignable. It hasn't become an issue, because they accept the offer, and as long as the buyer can perform in securing financing, they're able to close.
Okay, yeah, because when you guys are writing the offer, you're not seeing Zoom Casa or assignee explicitly.
Well, we do. We do typically say Zoom Casa or assignee. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Okay, so it does
Language.
so they know. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Any other questions that I can answer? Let's see, what is the fee for your services when a buyer uses your service? So for cash offer, if a buyer is using that service, then they would pay us equal to 1% of the purchase price upon close. Otherwise, if they're using our buy before you sell service and our cash offer service, then they would pay 0.5% of the purchase price upon close. So if they couple it with another service, then they would be able to essentially have some cost savings on the service that we offer. But that's how the fees work. Great question. And again, because with the service, you do have a dedicated rep, we really ensure that you kind of have the support you need to be able to ask questions like regarding, cost, et cetera, and be able to talk to someone whenever you do have a need for the service. And I'm just pulling up the slide to kind of go through, again, general overview, everything that we offer. So you can bring this up with your rep and basically say, hey, I heard about cash offer. I have a client that needs it. Or I heard about buy before you sell. This is my client situation. Can we plug in these numbers and see how it would work? In which case you would be able to, talk more specifically and go over costs, et cetera, as it relates to the specific need that you might have.
As part of the plus services that you have, if we're in a situation for the buy before you sell and the seller doesn't understand the program, is our assigned rep able to have that conversation with them too in order to get the offer accepted?
Yeah, so are you talking about, the buy before you sell service, or like the cash offer with a buyer service?
Cash offer with the buyer.
Got it. So We will happily have a conversation with the buyer about the service, or, I mean, well, with the seller, we typically don't have a conversation with them because in most cases, the offer is just assigned, at which point it's already been accepted. So whether the seller is really knowledgeable about the fact that it's been assigned is kind of null and void at that point. But if they do have questions and want to talk to us, I mean, they can call us directly. It just hasn't been a situation that's come up in the past.
I'm just thinking of some listing agents, if they see that it could be assignable, like they may flag it to their client and say that this is a possibility. And if the seller has questions, I was just thinking you guys might be able to explain it a little bit better.
Yeah, sure thing. I mean, if they have questions and they want to talk to us, they certainly can, and we're happy to have that conversation. Really, anything to help get the buyer in the home and help make it work for them is important to us. So if that means talking to the seller, then that's something we'll certainly do.
Awesome, thanks.
Do you have a limit on how far over list price you will write an all cash offer? I just sold a house that was $70,000 over asking. So in this market, we really can't have a limit. So no, we don't have a limit how far over ask, because technically it's the buyer's offer, despite the fact that we're writing it, and they're sending us the earnest money deposit. So if they can't perform and they lose their earnest money deposit, then that's, you know, on them. We do ask to see a pre-approval, and if they're not pre-approved for the price that they're writing the offer at, then we may ask to see proof of funds to ensure that they'll be able to cover the additional costs that will be due and payable at close. But otherwise, because they're establishing that they have pre-approval and the earnest money deposit, and we're using their funds to write the offer and put in the earnest money deposit, we don't have a limit as to how far over ask will go. Any other questions?
Hello, yes, I have a question. So if, are you familiar with the Compass concierge service?
I am.
Yeah, so how do you compare, what is the difference? Because it sounds like, so if someone just, for example, someone has like a house that is a fixer-upper, and do you lend the money and then is it paid at the end, or you just charge a percentage of the whole service, the entire amount that they borrowed?
Yeah, so in comparison to a Compass Concierge program, we offer a whole lot of additional services as noted here. But when you're specifically talking about like pay for pre-sale home prep at close, that's referring to the listing concierge program that we offer as well. And so I'll go ahead and show you a kind of side-by-side comparison of how the listing prep service would compare to that of like a Compass program. So specifically talking about pre-sale home prep, Compass Concierge will essentially pay for the improvements and the client will pay at close. They may be subject to interest after a certain period of time, or subject to additional fees as a kind of kickback from the vendor that's paid to the concierge program. So there's additional fees payable to Compass Concierge via utilizing the service. And it's really just a cash advance. So most critically, the difference between our service and that one is that we have designers that work on every project, and we have project coordinators, and we have vetted vendors. So rather than just offering cash and expecting a client to basically figure it out from there, we will pay for everything and facilitate everything and employ our designers to help determine the right scope that's engineered to help the home perform. On top of that, we don't have dollar or scope limits. So most notably, Compass was restricted at 3% of a list price as kind of a ceiling for what could be advanced to a client, whereas our program doesn't have those sort of restrictions. Meaning if your client says, I need to do a $30,000 project, I need to do a $3,000 project, I need to do a $300,000 project, it's all relative to the equity they have and to really what kind of scope we're looking at as it relates to getting the home sold and what kind of return on investment we're looking at as well. So we have a conversation with the seller about the best way to proceed according to what their needs are and proceed from there. So again, comparing it to a Compass program, we don't have those sort of dollar or scope limitations. We're really high touch. We're not just going to give them money and expect them to figure it out like a cash advance program would. We're offering design support and project management. And I think finally, an important note is that this program is powered by a third party. So whereas a Compass program is powered directly by Compass, we're a third party to really make for a cleaner transaction so that you're not liable for repayment in the event your client, falls off the face of the earth, right? Our agreement is with the client versus with you as an independent contractor of ours and with your client, right? So again, because we're a third party, it really protects against any conflict of interest that would arise from a brokerage advancing cash to their own client. So talking just about pre-sale home prep, those are the main differences. I think it's important to note that in general, the other concierge programs in this space offer as many as we do. We talked a lot about cash offer and buy before you sell, which wouldn't be available via a Compass concierge. They do have a bridge loan, which functions differently, but again, it's not the same thing, nor do they have kind of the array of services or the dedicated rep support. So because we offer a dedicated rep, there is a cost assigned with associated with enrollment that's comped for the first year, but it's because we offer a rep to make this a tool that you can use as opposed to, again, another program or a Compass program that's really kind of just offered and they can figure out how to use it and figure out how to leverage it. So I apologize for the long-winded answer, but hopefully that helped give some context and comparison.
Okay, thank you.
And then also like these, like as far as staging companies, like any improvement, is this like, do you have a list of vendors or we can make those recommendations? Like how does that work?
It's totally up to you and your client. So we do have our own internal list of folks that we've worked with or that are approved on our platform. But whenever we receive a submission from you, we'll ask if you have any preferred vendors you'd like to use. We'll ask if your client has any preferred folks they'd like to use, and those will be the folks that are hired for the job, provided they're licensed and insured. So full visibility and full control as to vendor selection when using this program. These are all good questions. Let's see. Anything else I can address?
Did you you haven't spoken about that service for buyers about the home customization, like in repairs and maintenance?
Yeah, so the way that our buyer services works is really similar to pre-sale home prep in that it's essentially the same process. You would submit, instead of submitting the listing, you would submit the buyer's property, and our design team will call you and basically schedule any next steps. So you'll submit the property, we'll get in touch with the buyer and have a conversation about potential scope, and then basically facilitate those improvements payable upon completion or as otherwise arranged. But there's not much of a difference between that and pre-sale home prep, other than the fact that the services are being completed really to the buyer's satisfaction, not so much for the purposes of resale value. So you can kind of look at it in two categories, like home prep versus like specialty finance solutions. Home prep would be, a listing concierge, buyer concierge for customization and repairs and maintenance. Senior services, so services for seniors to help them prep their home for sale, and moving concierge would all fall under the category of home prep. And then with specialty finance, we have like our cash offer program and our buy before you sell program, both geared towards kind of reverse engineering the process of buying and selling to make it more favorable for the clients that you're dealing with, to either leverage their asset to buy a new property or leverage our cash to buy a home with financing. So those are kind of the two umbrellas that our services fall under, and they all have similar processes in accordance with kind of either being home prep or specialty finance. And I think I'll show that dashboard once more, just so you can see really what you get access to when you enroll. And when you get into the dashboard, when you click this tab, which actually now says training, it doesn't say success anymore. But when you click the training tab, you'll have the option to watch videos on our pre-sale home prep service or schedule a meeting with a rep to go through the details of anything that we offer. So there's different options to ensure that you have access to some of these answers to questions you might have, or a support member from our team who can talk about the details and really just go through that with you, and as well submit projects and book calls, etc. It all lives within here.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Well, these have all been great questions. For those of you that are hopping off, thank you so much for taking the time. I think I'll wrap things up here, as I've taken an hour of your day, but I really appreciate it, and we'll look forward to hopefully working with you all. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with our team. I'll leave a contact email and phone number in the chat here. And this was recorded, so hopefully it will be circulated, and we'll look forward to working with you.